Hey guys, how you going? Hope you're all doing very well. This evening I'm going to be doing something a little bit different. Tonight is not going to be a movie review. In fact, I'm going to be reviewing a mini-series. So I haven't done this very often, so hopefully this is going to be interesting. So this mini-series was released in 1995, English language, directed by Michael Jenkins, and this is called Blue Murder. So Blue Murder depicts the real life of Roger Rogerson. Now, Roger Rogerson back in the 1980s was the most decorated police detective in the New South Wales Police Force. He was regarded as a knight in shining armour. He made so many arrests, and he was keeping the public safe. But that was until information was leaked that he was in partnership with the most notorious criminal in the Sydney underworld, Nettie Smith. Now, Nettie Smith was this barbaric, psychotic individual who ran this empire free of will, basically free of consequence, because Roger Rogerson had so much power that he was giving Nettie Smith the green light to commit crime. Basically, he wasn't going to be arrested for it, or if he was arrested, evidence was going to be tampered with, so he'd be let off. And so in return, Nettie Smith was giving half of his crime proceeds to Roger Rogerson, and this is how they created their empire. And this empire was very destructive, and it led to a lot of deaths, and it led to an all-out underworld war. And so how this war unfolded and who was the casualties and basically who benefited from this is something you're going to have to find out for yourself, because that's as far as I'm going with my synopsis. Now, my thoughts on Blue Murder. For those of you who know my channel, you know that I believe Australian television is absolutely pathetic. I believe that Australian cinema is quite weak, but lately they have been making a bit of a resurgence. But Australian television is absolutely laughable. In fact, I'll go as far to say that I don't even bother supporting that crap anymore. Is that it's always this this romantic sort of crap that, first world problems, you roll your eyes at. And I know that a lot of other countries have this similar sort of thing, but Australian television has just come to the point where it's just laughably bad. So that is a great shame. It pains me to say it, because I'm always looking to support the television and cinema in my country, but it's just so hard to do that. But I believe that Blue Murder is the rare exception where a miniseries really works. In fact, I will say that this is the best production to ever come out of my country, whether it's a miniseries, whether it's a TV series, or whether it's cinema. I believe that Blue Murder is probably the best production that has come out of my country, because it is absolutely masterfully created. Now, this is a real life story that is so riveting. Now, I'm very at that point where Roger Rogerson was doing his shady dealings. I was very, very young, so I wasn't really that old. I can't really remember too much of the news basically following the story as it was happening, but in my later years, I knew who Roger Rogerson was. I grew up with knowing that he was the most corrupt cop in Australian history, and that to me was very scary, is that this is a guy who is in charge of looking after your safety, but when you can't rely on the guy that you consider the knight in shining armour, who can you rely on? All of a sudden, that vulnerability comes about, and I believe that Blue Murder created that vulnerability to a point where you can actually experience everything that is going on, and that's the reason why I think it's such a brilliant effort as far as Australian production is concerned. And so you've got this guy, Roger Rogerson. He's a very charismatic person. He was a very manipulative person, very charming. This is the guy that you could have a beer with, and this is the guy that was portrayed on the news. And in this miniseries, I believe that he was brilliantly portrayed by Richard Roxburgh, and I will go as far to say it's probably one of the best performances that I've ever seen, is that he captured everything that Roger Rogerson was. This is a guy that you could share a beer with. This is a guy that was not only manipulating the characters in this miniseries, he was actually manipulating the viewer as well, is that you're getting suckered into believing that he was this good guy. And so this is how he came about. This is how he created his business. This is how he actually gave that perception that he was this guy that you could trust. But underneath, you got that very sinister sort of underbelly that he was actually doing, and you could see a different side of him, and that's what made him so scary, but so scary in such a realistic way. And when he starts to do things behind closed doors, all of a sudden, as I said, that vulnerability comes out, and the vulnerability is emphasized to a point where you feel so uncomfortable. And this is as close as you'll get to crime without being a criminal yourself. And so this is something that I experienced. This is something that really put me into the seat of these people, and that's something that you get very, very rare that you get. And not only basically television, but in cinema as well, is that Michael Jenkins did such a good job at actually putting you as a fly on the wall, and that you feel as though you're a criminal for 3 hours. And that's something that I appreciated most about it. Not only do you have an absolutely brilliant performance from Richard Roxburgh, but you have great performances from Tony Martin, who plays the psychotic Nettie Smith. You've got Peter Phelps, who plays Graham Henry, who was his sidekick. You've got Gary Sweet, who plays Chris Rentakill Flannery. terrifying individual, a psychotic individual, and just all of these fantastic actors. You've got Bill Hunter, who's a legendary Australian actor who's since passed away, unfortunately. Steve Bastoni, Alex Dimitriadis, a cameo from John Jarrett even. So all of these brilliant Australian actors who were given brilliant characters. They were all very colourful, and when they all come into this world, they're all stabbing each other in the back, and you know that this thing is going to unfold in a really bad way, but it's just got such a capturing presence that it just engulfs the viewer, and you're kind of lost. You basically, you don't know that this goes for 3 hours, just because it's just so riveting. It never loses steam. And I believe that the real story of Roger Rogerson had so much potential and so much quality and so much material that this director has taken it, and I think that if it was made into a film at an hour and 30 minutes, it wouldn't have the impact. Is that it has so much material that it allows it to be a 3-hour miniseries, and I just believe, as I said, this is the best production to ever come out of my country, and if you see the actual miniseries, you'll know exactly why. So the grittiness of the underworld is captured brilliantly from the lower end sort of production. It's got this feeling of dirt, seediness, and just dealing with characters that are not clean. And so if you don't have a clean sort of visual, you don't feel that sense of being clean yourself. Is that you feel dirty, you feel like you're actually going in on these dirty drug deals, and the grittiness just emphasizes how corrupt this whole world is. You've got shocking violence that I thought was very pivotal to the film, very pivotal to the miniseries, because it showcases how barbaric this world was. But it's just definitely the performances, especially Richard Roxburgh, who playing this Roger Rogerson, that was just an absolute knockout performance. It's probably, as I said, the best performance I've seen in my entire lifetime. So I know that's a big thing to say, but this is a mini-series that stands the test of time. I believe that it is the best mini-series that I have ever seen, and as I said, the best production to ever come out of my country. It's an absolute masterpiece. It does justice to the real story. So if you're not familiar with Roger Rogerson and the corrupt police force in the 1980s New South Wales, then do yourself a favour, go out there and see this mini-series. It is flawless, and it's something that Michael Jenkins can be really proud of, because it makes me proud that this is an Australian production. So overall, for Blue Murder, not surprising, I'm going to give this one 5 stars, an absolute knockout. Alright guys, that's it for my review. Hope you enjoyed it. Until next time, keep watching movies, and I'll see you later. Bye.